Hey, I'm Lincoln Smith. You can find me on social media with hashtag #GringosForMexico, and this is the 2018 Mexican elections. On Sunday, July 1st, 2018, the citizens of the United States of Mexico, which is the official name, will vote for their next president. This is a very important election for Mexico that I recommend everyone watch closely. And if Mexican politics is new to you, here's what you need to know to follow along. Presidents in Mexico serve a single 6-year term with no chance for re-election in their lifetime. Elections are by popular vote, meaning the candidate with the most votes wins. Imagine that. The winner only needs the most votes overall and not an absolute majority. Mexico does not have the position of vice president, so each candidate runs alone. The entire election process, including voter registration, is managed at the federal level by the National Electoral Institute, or INE as it's referred to, and not the state level. The government provides funding to all political parties and allocates time for TV and radio ads, so even small parties get national exposure. Parties can raise their own money, but spending limits are set by law. Elections are held for a single day on a Sunday to give more people the chance to get out and vote. Voters cast paper ballots in local polling stations, but you won't see people wearing I voted stickers. You will see people with ink on their thumbs and perforated voter ID cards. Mexico is considered a multi-party system with many more parties participating in the process than we're used to in the US. There is no primary election where registered voters select the candidate to represent their party. Party leadership selects the candidate, and that candidate is given a spot on the official ballot. In Mexico, political alliances called alianzas are common, where multiple parties combine support behind a single candidate in hopes of an advantage. Just like Survivor. These alliances are temporary and even involve parties from different sides teaming up. For the 2018 election, there's a new dynamic that gives anyone the chance to run as an independent. By collecting the required amount of verified signatures from around the country, an independent candidate gets to participate in the presidential debates and be included on the official ballot alongside major party candidates. Though this first year, getting the required amount of signatures was easier said than done. Out of the dozens of people showing interest in fall of 2017, only 3 made the cut. In the US, we're used to a two-party system where power shifts back and forth periodically between the two parties, and it's rare to even have a third-party candidate in the debates, let alone be a serious contender on the ballot. In Mexico this year, there will be 6 candidates, 3 major party and 3 independent, all of whom are given an equal seat at the table, which I think is much better. At least it forces different ideas to be debated in front of a national audience and not just options A or B. Unfortunately, even though this part of the process is more open, past election results in Mexico don't necessarily reflect it. Because for most of the last century, up until now, only 2 parties have ever won. And out of those 2 parties, one party has been in power almost 77 of the last 89 years. In other words, all but 2 presidents have been from the same party since 1929. Besides those 2, one other party has come close but has never won. So, here are the parties you need to know in order of past election victories. Note, a lot of the parties are referred to by their initials or acronyms in Spanish, like our first, the PRI or PRI, which stands for the Institutional Revolutionary Party. The PRI was the dominant party of the last century, holding power continuously for almost 71 years in a row, before losing the 2000 and 2006 elections, which was a huge deal in Mexico. But they came back and won it again in 2012 with the current president. The PRI's historic monopoly of power continues to be a major concern for many Mexican voters. Next, the PAN or PAN, which stands for the National Action Party. This is the party that beat the PRI in the 2000 and 2006 elections, but lost again in 2012. The PRD or PRD, which stands for the Party of the Democratic Revolution. This is the other party to come close, and many believe had the election stolen from them in 2006. Quick side note, it may sound strange that the PRI and the PRD reference the revolution in their names, since we're not used to thinking of revolutions as institutional or democratic. But it's probably because Mexico's current constitution is based off the one put in place in 1917 during the Mexican Revolution, and these parties were formed afterwards. A relatively new major party you'll see continuing this year is the Morena Party, which stands for the National Regeneration Movement. The party is led by the person who came close to winning in the 2006 election as a candidate for the PRD. There are other established parties who have run, but this year you'll only see their logos as part of alliances, like the PT or Labor Party, the Verde or Green Party, the Citizens Movement, the New Alliance, and the Social Encounter parties. In the US, we're used to political parties being closely tied to ideology, with a hard line down the middle on many key issues. The same cannot be said for Mexico, which means that you can't just assume that since someone is more socially liberal or conservative, they'll vote a certain way. However, Mexico has the same problems of stubborn party loyalty as we do in the US, which is frustrating for voters wanting change. And that brings us to this year's candidates. In no particular order, representing the PRI and the alliance Todos por México, or Everyone for Mexico, with the Green Party and the New Alliance Party, is José Antonio Meade, a 48-year-old lawyer and economist from Mexico City with a PhD in economics from Yale. He has served in a number of high-profile positions, including Secretary of Finance, Foreign Affairs, Social Development, and Energy. He's of Irish descent, and his last name, which looks like Meade in Spanish, uses the English pronunciation of Meade. There's even a political spot clarifying the pronunciation for voters. His qualifications are impressive, and he's served under different political parties, but he's running for an incumbent party with dismal approval ratings. However, despite the extreme unpopularity of the current president and the PRI party in general, the PRI is a massive political machine in Mexico and always seems to find a way. Next, representing the PAN and the alliance Por México al Frente, or For Mexico in Front, with the PRD and Citizens Movement Party, is Ricardo Anaya, a 38-year-old lawyer and politician from Querétaro with a PhD and fluent in multiple languages. He started young in politics within the PAN party and eventually made his way to party leader, but has since resigned to run for president. He travels, or used to travel frequently, to Atlanta, Georgia, where his family was living at the time, which, understandably, is a source of criticism for some voters in Mexico. Remember, the PAN is the only party to beat the PRI, which it did in the 2000 and 2006 elections, but lost again in 2012. Now we'll see if voters give them another shot. There is no candidate representing the PRD this election. This year, the PRD formed an alliance with Anaya and the PAN party. Their last candidate has left the party and formed the Morena Party. Representing the Morena and the alliance Juntos Haremos Historia, or Together We Will Make History, with the Labor Party and the Social Encounter Party, is Andrés Manuel López Obrador, a 64-year-old longtime politician from the state of Tabasco. He's referred to as AMLO for short, as well as other nicknames like El Peje, which is a freshwater fish from his home state. He has been involved with different political parties over the last 40+ years, including the PRI, the PRD, and now the Morena Party, which he founded. He's a former head of government of Mexico City, and this will be his third time running for president. In 2006, he came very close to winning, and many believe had the election stolen from him through fraud. In the 2012 elections, he was also competitive. He's seen as a left-wing populist, and some would even say socialist. Some people make comparisons with Bernie Sanders. He is very outspoken and very critical of the corruption and violence in Mexico, though some question whether or not he has the actual policies to back it up. He's currently the front runner with all other candidates trailing in the polls. This election will show if third time's a charm for AMLO. Now the independents. Margarita Zavala is a lawyer, politician, and wife of former President Felipe Calderón. She recently left the PAN party, which was the party of her husband, when she didn't get the nomination from party leaders. There are obvious similarities to Hillary Clinton, such as being a former First Lady and potentially first female president in Mexico's history. Next, Jaime Rodriguez, known as El Bronco or the Wild Horse. He's the first independent to win a governorship in modern history and hopes to do the same in the presidency. And finally, Armando Rios Peter, known as the Jaguar. Gotta love the nicknames. He's a lawyer, economist, and politician who's a virtual unknown, but apparently is a big policy guy. One notable independent hopeful that didn't get enough signatures was Mexico's first indigenous female pre-candidate, Maria de Jesus Patricio, or Marichui, as she's called. While she didn't get the support needed, she voiced some important human rights concerns while trying. Independent candidates are set to have a big impact on the election by splitting the vote. Each one of them could pull votes away from the major party candidates, so expect attacks in all directions. So what's next? Direct candidate campaigning runs from the end of March all the way through June up until a few days before the July 1st election. All 6 candidates will meet face-to-face in the presidential debates, where undecided voters will start to make up their minds. As a gringo who loves Mexico, here's what I think of the elections so far. Many Mexicans, both inside and outside of Mexico, are extremely unhappy with the current situation in their country. And if the comments on social media are any indication, the country is very divided and this election will be super contentious. But I wouldn't expect anything else from an election that many consider to be one of the most important in recent history. While I cannot actually vote in the Mexican elections, I work in Mexico and pay taxes here. I want to see the very best candidate to help the country become a more safe and secure place for those who live here and those of us who love coming here. 2017 was not a good year for Mexico. In fact, it was one of the most violent on record in recent history, and 2018 is not off to a good start. The citizens of Mexico deserve much, much better. During the campaign process, I will attempt to be as fair, impartial, and unbiased as possible. Of course, opinions will be made during the process, and I want to know what you think, especially if you'll be voting in the July 1st election. Please comment below and let me know who you'll be voting for and why. But be cool, keep it civil, and please verify your information before sharing. And please like my page and subscribe to my channel to follow me through the election process. And especially, sobre todo, que gane el mejor candidato para México y su gente. May the best candidate for Mexico and her people win. Viva México!